my slide just went away. There we go. All right, so we've been going through our 2020 Vision series. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I tell you, a lot of pastors are using 2020 for vision. It's a common thing, apparently. If it's not vision, it's seeing clearly. 2020, seeing clearly, right? Like, it's a common thing. But I think it's really cool. I think it's cool that I get to be part of this series. Brad, Bobby, and I spent a lot of time really kind of talking about what we're going to do this next year, where we want to go, where we see God really working. It's awesome being a part of that. And being able to be part of this series is awesome, right? So, we're on to greater than. So that's what this series is all about, right? And you're going to have to, I might ask you guys to raise your hands. I am a youth pastor, right? I'm Kevin, by the way. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Kevin, the youth pastor here. I don't get up here a whole lot, so you don't get to see my face if you're not back there a whole lot. So I might ask you to raise your hand. What is greater than to you? When you think greater than, we're talking as a church, right? What is greater than to you? What does it mean to you? Now, I want to see, give me a hand. What does greater than mean to you? And look over here, because I know you guys, right? What does greater than mean? Give me something, Randy.
Think of something greater than what we're doing right now.
The better than, right? Right, yeah. Pat.
More than me.
More than me, yes.
Like the big picture.
Big picture, yes. All right. So every one of those, you're right. Good job. That's all. I'm not going to go forever like I do in the back. Right. Greater than, better than. I want to be better than I am. Right. I want to be greater than. I think us as a church, we can be greater than we are, because I know my God is greater than us. Right. Our God is amazing. We serve a great God. All right. So. Series, greater than. We have that. Nope, go back. I'm not there yet. Purpose statement. We have this great commitment to the great commandment, and a great commission will grow a great church. Well, we have a good church. But how great is our commitment? How great is our commitment to the commandment and the commission? I think it's so-so. I think we do pretty good for us. Bobby talks all the time about how he would come to Sunbreak if he wasn't the pastor here. And I proved that first, I want to say. I went here for a long time, so I proved it better than he did. I just want to lay that out there. But I think we can be great. I think we can reach more people in our community. I think we do so-so at that. I think we can be better at that. There are a lot of unchurched people in our area. There's a lot of people in our area, really close to our church, that don't know Christ. I think we can be better at reaching them. That's really what I think the antithesis, I'm going to use a Bobby word, antithesis of this series is. Right, so I'm going to do a little review. First week, week 1, Bobby talked about membership. Be greater than, right? Talked about membership, fellowship, community, knitting ourselves together. I talked about Brad taking kind of hold of small groups and try and make that a little bit better, right? Week 2, talk about ministry, how every one of us is a minister. We're all ministers in one way or another. And talk about Cameron, our new DOP. Love you. That's right. And the 301 class. Week 3, we talked about magnification, increasing our digital footprint, kind of putting ourselves out there a little bit more wide so that people can see, hey, they're talking about Jesus. They're talking about someone who loves me, and man, that's important, right? Like, it matters. So last week was Devin. He's talked about the missions, and that really fits him, right? He's all about Yelm. He's starting that mission out there, and the 401 class. Now, I don't know if you're tracking. Nope, back. So we talked about membership, we talked about ministry, and we talked about missions. If you're looking at the top, that leaves maturity for your youth pastor. Yeah, we're going to talk about maturity, because I'm clearly the most mature person to talk about this, right? Last week, and I didn't even tell him I was going to use this, but last week I threatened someone with just right in your ear, and that I was told I'm not very mature. Right. All right, so the next slide. Sunbreak Church exists, and this one is going to be discipleship. To teach them all things. It's discipleship. right? Are you willing to be a disciple of Jesus? Are you willing to disciple others? So, when I'm trying to put this together personally, like how do I personalize maturity? Because I'm clearly mature. I stated that, right? So I was like, all right, I'm going to go back to my childhood. I'm going to show some embarrassing pictures, but I'm cute, so it works, right? So 1988, that's my family. We literally lived like a mile down the road from this church. It wasn't here, but we lived a mile down the road. If you know Don and Glenda, we lived on the same street as them. Yeah, that's my family, 1988. I'm not mature there. I'm 7 there, by the way. I'm very immature. I am a mama's boy. I'll admit that. I love my mama. I was one of those kids, you know, you see in the supermarket, you're like, I can't believe they let their kid do that. Like, I was that kid. I'm not proud of it, but that was me, right? So, 1996, that's my 8th grade graduation. I went to a private school, so it was a big deal. Like, I had to get all dressed up, and there's like a table. You would have thought I graduated college or something. It was ridiculous. I thought at this point, I think I'm extremely mature. Yeah, you can laugh at that. That's fine. That's fine. Because it is funny. My parents, after the picture on the left, about 3 years later, they split. And it was hard. It was really hard on me and my sister. But because of that, because of the hardship, because of what we went through, I thought I was really mature. I thought I had gone through a lot, I've dealt with a lot, and I deal with it well. So I think I'm mature in that picture. Not there, there. I felt like I had a really strong moral compass. My family is Christian, right? They went to church. I've got a strong moral compass, and I feel like I did. I watched out for my sister. I made sure that she was safe a lot more than I did beforehand, because beforehand I didn't care. My mom got remarried, and she married a man that did not go to church, and he had a son that did not go to church. And my stepbrother tried to get me to do stuff all the time that was inappropriate, not okay, and I always told him no, because I'm a Christian. Constantly. Like, I thought I was really mature. Till I hit my junior year, and I proved that I'm just cocky. I'm not mature, I'm just cocky. I started like going off the rails, right? Like doing my own thing. Like most people who don't follow Christ, I'm going to do my own thing. And I really started going off the rails. And like by the time I hit my senior year, I'm moving out, Mom. I don't need to live here, right? At the end of my senior year, my daughter's born, right? Like I'm very immature. I'm all about me. Nothing else matters. I don't see it that way at the time, but I'm really immature, right? Next picture. Last week, Devin talked about watershed moments. And I thought, man, if this isn't a watershed moment that turned my life around. 2003, that's this church. I don't know if you can see the picture. Back here, in the back row, our seats were different, but back here in the back row, because the cool kids sit in the back, it was like my 3rd time here. I gave my life to Christ. Like, watershed moment. Things changed. And I realized at that point, I'm not mature, right? Like, I'm not where I should be. I've got a long way to go. But I realized it at that point, really. And then 2005, I didn't tell her I was putting that up there. So hopefully I'm not in trouble. But another watershed moment, right? Like, I've got God and I've got a godly woman. Watershed moment kind of just set me off on a path towards Him. Wow. All right. So I'm instantly mature at that point, right? Again, I'm the youth pastor. I'm not really mature. So in thinking about this, that's how I personalize it, is through those stories. Like, I know I'm not mature. I know that I've got a lot to grow. So how do I make you guys feel the immaturity in you, right? Because none of us are really mature. None of us are all the way there, right? So I've got another family story. My dad is not very excited about this one. I told him on Friday that I was going to tell a story about him. When I was young, my dad remarried. And I don't know how many of you know my family, but I've got 2 little redheads. My dad, when he married a redhead. I've been bound and determined to have redheads in my life forever, apparently. God knew I needed something. But he remarried, and I remember distinctly, you can go to the next one. It's an odd picture, right? Have you guys ever gotten in an argument that didn't matter? Yeah, right, all the time, right? Like all the time, and it's pretty immature. Not only didn't matter, but when it was done, win or loss, you lost, right? Like, so immature. So, when I'm 13, and my dad doesn't remember this, which makes it even better, he and my stepmom got in an argument about whether or not a 10-minute shower used more water than a bath. And I swear it was weeks that they talked about whether or not, I don't know why they didn't just try it to begin with, just like, oh, let's see, But after weeks, they finally all right, let's turn on the water for 10 minutes and see if it fills up the tub. And a shower does use less water. Do you think that stopped anybody from that household taking a bath? It didn't. It didn't. So for winning, my dad still lost, right? And I tell that story because I always viewed my dad as an extremely mature person. Like he handled, maybe he didn't, but he showed us as kids, he handled my parents' divorce really well. He handled it in a very mature way. And I've always thought of my dad as like my rock, right? Like my spot that I can go to for good advice. He's a mature person. He wasn't about that, right? He wasn't about that. So I figured, looking at this, looking at maturity, how else can I explain it other than maturity? Because you think of an adolescent. I do. I think of an adolescent. So I looked it up. Maturity, the state of being completely grown. Well, shoot, that really fits well with what we're talking about, right? Because greater than equals growth. Next one. There we go. Greater than equals growth. So, am I growing? Am I willing to grow? I know, that's something you got to look at, right? So I look at the Bible, and honestly, I started this when I was starting to prep a couple weeks ago. I started somewhere else in the Bible than I ended up. God works in weird ways, right? So I started with Jesus. Like, you can't go more mature than Jesus in the Bible, right? Like, he's the most mature person there is in the Bible. But the problem with that story is, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's like a 30-year gap in his lifespan in the Bible. Other than when he's 13 and he stayed at the place to talk to the temple. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. Yeah, he stayed at the temple. Other than that story, there's not a whole lot about Jesus. So I thought, well, I could go to Paul. It's like the most prolific preacher there ever was, and super mature. But I thought, after thinking about it, discipleship, growing, maturity, I should go with Peter, because he's not mature. And I can identify with him. Right? So let's start with this. Luke 5. So Jesus had been preached on the side, right? He's talking on the side of the water, and he calls out to him and says, hey, throw your nets to the other side. Everybody knows the story. Throw your nets to the other side. Simon answered, Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I will let down the nets. When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled the boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man. For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And so James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners, then Jesus said to Simon, Don't be afraid, from now on you will fish for people. So they pulled their boats up to shore, left everything and followed him. When I think of Peter, I don't go straight to mature. He's kind of a loudmouth. He's impulsive. He's blunt. Honestly, if you lived in the Northwest, it would fit, right? Like, I tend to be a little bit blunt too, and I don't try to be mean. It's just I just throw up words and sorry later, right? Like he would have fit in the Northwest. But he says something really mature. He doesn't know who Jesus is, but he knows he's a rabbi. In the next verse, he says, because you say so. Because you say so, Lord, I will do it. It's kind of a mature action, right? But in the next slide, he tells Jesus, go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man. I think of this, and I might be reaching, but I think of this as the moment where, he starts following Christ. And I equate this to when I started following Christ. I think about it and I think, I told Jesus no many times because I didn't want to follow the rule. Like I think of Christianity, I think of all the stuff that I'm supposed to do and not do, mainly. That's what I thought of was what I'm not supposed to do, instead of just thinking, I want to follow God. And I kind of equate that to this, right? Like he's saying, God, I don't know who you are yet, but you have prophetic powers, and I don't think I can follow you. Because at that point in time, a rabbi would look for someone very specific to have follow them. Very specific. Like in the time of Jesus, a rabbi would carefully vet out all potential disciples to make sure that they were smart enough, influential enough, and righteous enough. Peter knows he's none of that. Peter knows he's none of that. And Jesus pursues a little bit farther. He says, hey, follow me. We got work to do. So we go farther in Peter's life. Matthew 16, 13 through 16. And I've used this in the back, and I feel bad how I used it before because now I feel differently about it. And it's weird how you study the Bible and you learn a little bit more, right? So Matthew 16, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? They replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But what about you, he asked. Who do you say I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah. I've taught on that as Peter being like, he had a light bulb moment. I really don't think that anymore. He said something really smart and accurate, but I kind of feel like this is the church answer. I get those sometimes. Yeah. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. He's dead on. You are the Messiah. Right? Like he's been with Jesus now for about 3 years. He knows he's the Messiah. So he answers, you're the Messiah. But literally, like a few verses later, and just a few verses later, almost the same conversation. In Matthew 16, 21 through 23, he says, From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief of priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Never, Lord, he said. This shall never happen to you. Jesus turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. I don't know about you, but if Jesus tells me, get behind me, Satan, I'm going to feel pretty bad about myself. Right? Like, he's proving, I've got the church answer. I've got that answer, but I still don't get it. Like, he's still looking for a savior to Israel. He's not looking to a savior to save everybody's soul. Right? He proves here that he's got the right answer. He just doesn't know how to apply it. And I can't help, just like before, like I view that first passage we looked at as kind of like when he accepted Christ. I view this as where we can get stuck. We can get stuck with the church answer. I'm going to do another Bible study, and it's going to be awesome, and I'm going to tell people that I'm doing this Bible study, but how am I applying that? Or am I just saying, hey, I'm going to another Bible study? Right? Then towards the end of his life, John 21, 6 through 8, there's actually after his life, Jesus has already been crucified. He's been raised from the dead, and he's appeared to them multiple times. But they don't really, like he's not there. They're not following him every day. I don't know about you guys. I know we have some fishermen, but Peter's a fisherman. And I can just imagine him saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. We know that he's risen. I don't know where he's at. Let's go fishing. Right? Like, I know how to fish. Let's just go do that. So, John 21, 6 through 8. Again, he's standing on shore. They can't see him. He said to them, cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you will find some. I don't know how they didn't equate this to earlier. I mean, I know it's been 3 years, but come on. Who else tells you to cast the net on the other side? But they don't know who it is. So they cast it. And now they were able to haul in, or they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved, John talking about himself here, therefore said to Peter, it's the Lord! When Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he had stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea. The other disciples came in by boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from land, but about 100 yards, football field. It's not close. I don't know how many of you are swimmers, but that's not close, right? This originally, I wasn't going to have this as part of my sermon today. Actually, I was going to end at the last passage and kind of talk about how we still had lots to grow. But God works in weird ways, right? Like I was listening to a podcast and I heard a pastor talk and he brought this passage up and it just hit me. Like, man, Peter, it's not that he just gets it. He jumps out of the water. Like he can't get to Christ fast enough. He doesn't care. That's literally his brothers behind him. It's literally his brothers. And then the disciples, his adopted brothers. And he can't stop long enough to just talk about it or help them row. He doesn't care about the fish. Like they just caught a record number of fish. They could be rich if they wanted to, right? That's a ton of fish. It doesn't matter to him. He sees Jesus over there and he can't help but to just jump. Right? He's got to jump in the water and get there as fast as he can because he wants to talk to his Lord. How often are we doing that? How often are we willing to just forget everything and chase Christ? How often are we willing to just leave our family even, right? And chase Christ? None of it mattered. And you see how the others, not that they did anything wrong, but they hauled the net in first. I don't want to call Peter fully mature here, but that was a mature decision to jump in the water. I don't know why he had to put on his coat first, but he made the mature decision. It's to chase after Christ with everything he had. So what am I asking you guys to do? Right? As part of this series, what am I asking you to do? What am I telling you that I want you to partner with us on? Have our maturity class next week. If you're a member here and you haven't taken maturity class, that's where you need to go. They tell you where we can plug you in, where we can get you to start maturing, to start growing. It's a lot more than just stopping at that one-on-one class and accepting Christ, right? There's definitely a lot of growing that I need to do. And I can only assume that you guys do. I don't know you well enough to know. Next is Time to Dream. So it's a spiritual growth campaign that we want to do. Time to Dream. We're going to start here in the spring. This is a Brad thing with the small groups. I know it's been talked about small groups a little bit, but I would love it if, at least for this series, had every one of you in a small group. Every one of you going through this together as a church, as a family, as a community, going through this, trying to get closer to God together. Jump in that water together, right? It's not just coming and listening and having the church answer, but chasing Christ. And lastly, we're going to end really early, but go figure. Kids skills. So Devin talked about kids skills last week, about the kids skills camp. I'm super excited about it. I wasn't here last year. I had to be in Hawaii. I'm sorry. But I was here for the first day of it. And we had about 50 kids last year. And about 30 of those were not from this church. I think we can do better than that. Matter of fact, I joked last year when Greg was up here talking about it that I wanted, I think it was 150 kids. I want 150 kids. Our church is really close to Horizon Point, and really close to Lake Point. And I don't think we reach those areas very well. I mean, those are our closest communities, and I don't think we're reaching those areas very well. I think we could do better. So I want, like I said, 150 kids. I don't know if Brad or Tony will be okay with that, but that's a lot of kids. But we want to use the Kids Skills Camp to kind of push into Kids Skills Club next fall. So we already have a Wednesday night service for the kids. We want to kind of morph it into Kids Skills Club, where we can kind of make it more attractive to people that don't know Christ, right? We're going to, this is Bobbyism. I know I keep on saying that, but the 3 C's. We want to make it Christ, community, and character as our emphasis for Kids Skills Club. And you know what? Even if people don't know Christ, community and character matter to the people, right? I hope they matter to you. I want to have community. I want to have character. Definitely want to have Christ. But we're gonna kind of change the way we do things, and I'm going to be asking for volunteers to help, like, pull up the chairs every week and put them off to the side, because I want to use this room for Kids Skills Club. If we're going to have a skill-based anything, we need room. And we have room. We have a big room that's not used during the week. Why don't we use it? For Christ's glory, right? That's a good thing. So I'm going to ask you guys to, prayerfully consider jumping in the water on this one. We need volunteers to not just put up chairs, but maybe, check people in from the community. Our check-in might have to be a little bit more secure, because it's not just church people coming, right? Like, it's hopefully a lot of people from the community. We need them to feel safe. How about, I know a lot of you probably don't consider yourselves teachers, but you could take the lesson and read it to them, and that'd be a good start, right? Jump in the water. Just try it out. We, as a church, we as a staff at least, we want to reach the community better, and I really want you guys to partner with us on that. The message of Jesus is awesome. And unless we find a way to tell people about how awesome our God is, I think we're failing. So if you're interested in any way, like even just being at the door and opening it for people for that Kids Skills Club, I would love it if you wrote on your communication card, like, Kids Skills, I'll try something, whatever. You can find a way to plug you in. If you have a skill, man, it could be scrambling eggs for all I care, right? Like, that skill that we can show people, like, help build community and character. That's great. Yeah. Above all, and that's the end of my, commercial break there, but above all else, if you haven't taken that first step that Peter took and really accepted, hey, follow me, that's definitely where you got to start. But if you have, I would absolutely pray that you would take the leap and just chase after Christ with everything you've got. All right, Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for examples like Peter, where you can see him mess up and mess up and mess up, and you're still willing to love him with everything you've got. And I thank you for examples of Peter jumping in the water and not caring about his family or his friends, but only that you matter, Father. Thank you for loving us, Lord. Amen.